The 146th edition of the Royce Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been. There ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered by him. And he scores. With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions. The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Royce Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Royce Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. It's been a few weeks since me and Anthony last talked to you guys. Of course, our last episode was an interview I had with former Tar Heel great Larry Miller. Having a chance to talk to you guys since then, I just got to say that was a lot of fun for me individually. He was great. Getting to talk with former players is always good, and so I was really glad to have that kind of opportunity to do such thing. And Anthony, football season's been rolling around, has gotten underway. Carolina 2-0 under Mac Brown, top 10 in the country.
That's right.
That's been a lot of fun. But we sit here today. Practice starts on Saturday for college basketball. We're 50 some odd days away from Carolina basketball season getting underway, college basketball itself getting underway. And so today what we're going to focus on is the Maui Invitational released its bracket yesterday. What Carolina needs to accomplish in practice, because this is as important practice session for Carolina as they've ever had. I've been on record saying this is the most important offseason for the program since Roy Williams came back home. Before we get to that, though, Carolina last week landed an in-state recruit in DeMarco Dunn. We're not going to go completely in-depth because that's going to be something that me and Mark will do later on him as a player. But Roy Williams brought in a loaded 2020 class and got off to the 2021 class with a good in-state recruit in DeMarco Dunn.
Yeah, I mean, you got two guys now committed in the class from in-state. That's something that, just really we haven't seen a whole lot of lately from the basketball program. That's really been more of the football program keeping guys in-state rather than the basketball program, which can recruit on the national level. So, of course, if you're bringing in guys like Walker Kessler, you're going to go out of state. That's going to happen. But yeah, I think it's a good pickup for Carolina in the backcourt. Kind of exactly what they need in this class, and still some really big targets out there. But both of these guys very talented. Guys that look more like the guys that we're used to seeing Carolina get that are going to stay for a little bit longer. And I think that's the biggest thing because, again, we've seen how the one-and-dones have worked for Carolina. It hasn't really been all that successful. We're going to get another look at it this year because more than likely one or two of the top three guys, Kessler, Sharp, and Caleb Love, are probably going to go to the NBA after the season is over. So we'll get another look at it really, this season. But I think after that, you even saw it in this past class with guys like Puff Johnson, Kerwin Walton, guys that are going to be there a little while, and now you're seeing it in this class. I know these aren't five-star guys. I think there probably will eventually be one or two five-star guys that join this class, but overall off to a good start and, keeping the guys that are extremely talented in state is something that I think people can be pretty happy with.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about with the recruiting. Carolina getting back into the one and done game isn't a bad thing because you want the kind of talent, but the way that this program runs, the way Roy Williams wants this thing to go, he's got to have some veteran guys to stick around. So he's going to try to do a better job of blending classes with one and dones and then guys that you can build his program around. That way you're not going through a situation where you lost both Kobe White and Nazir Little in the same season. So me and Mark will go a little deeper on DeMarco Dunn a little bit later sometime coming up. And Carolina's also trying to land Jabari Smith. That'll happen this weekend, and we'll have you fully covered on the website if he does pick Carolina. And if he doesn't pick Carolina, we'll have something on there as well for where we go from that. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk about the Maui Invitational yesterday. Mm-hmm. The tournament, which now has been, of course, moved from Maui to Asheville, North Carolina. I wonder how Bill Walton's going to like calling the game, if he's even allowed to be at the facility.
Yeah, that is a perfect spot for Bill Walton. Yeah. Because most of the people in Asheville have smoked a little bit to the point where they don't remember their own names. Yeah. Kind of like Bill Walton when he's on air. But yeah, I mean it's interesting to say the least. I think going to Asheville definitely helps Carolina
in terms of travel. That's because right now we're sitting here today as recording. There's probably not going to be any fans there. If they are, it's probably just going to be parents of kids. So there's not going to be an environment
right.
And that's the thing about like Maui is that the Battle for Atlantis has probably become the more prestigious tournament of the
in terms of who's there.
Yes,
you're putting 5-6 teams preseason ranked in there.
Yeah.
This one's not as stacked as in recent years, but that's also the Maui's been hurt by the fact that now you've got all these different classics that everybody has these different ones, and now you're lucky if you have 2 ranked teams in the same what do they call holiday tournaments? That's what I was looking for. That's the thing. I still think it's pretty interesting. But yeah, for travel wise, really favors Carolina and Davidson. I think the most because everybody else. I don't know, how they're going to go about it this year with travel. I don't know if you're going to have to take buses everywhere, if you're still going to be allowed to fly team charter, how it's going to work because, everything with COVID-19, they're going to be trying to space people out, everything like that. It's easier to do that on buses than it is to do that on jet airplanes.
Yeah.
Shocking revelation there. But, yeah, it's a pretty solid field. I don't think it's world beating, but you know what? In the year that we're in right now, and so much uncertainty as to what the schedule is going to look like, this could be the first time Carolina plays.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that it is a little bit weaker is probably helpful for Carolina, especially for a team that is having to replace a pretty decent amount, even from last year's roster.
The tournament is definitely a lot less prestigious than last year you had Dayton, where you saw them break out, Kansas, Michigan State a few years ago. But there's still some intriguing matchups. Carolina, they've got their first game matchup, which will be against UNLV the first Monday of the tournament at 9:30. But you look at the bracket, the way it's set up, you've also got in there Indiana's there.
Mm-hmm.
So if they couldn't meet until the championship round, but those are 2 blue bloods. It's going to be a really important year for Archie Miller and his future with that program there in Bloomington. Texas is there. We know the relationship that Carolina has with Texas, whether it's been Rick Barnes or Shaka Smart. For some reason, Carolina cannot beat them.
We stink against them. It's just that simple.
But they, a lot like Indiana, you could not play them until the final round of the tournament. Alabama's there. Of course, you played them last year in the Battle for Atlantis. Nate Oakes has done a really good job on the recruiting trail. He's now getting 5 stars to go play for the Crimson Tide. And then we're not talking football, that's basketball. So that's a program that's improving. But this is a tournament that Carolina will be favored to win.
Right.
You've got some favorable matchups. Davidson, as you mentioned, that's an in-state school, small school up the road from us here in Charlotte. They're going to be competing. So what was just your thoughts on the bracket and what you saw from what Carolina got to draw as trying to win the Maui Invitational?
Oh, I think It's definitely a pretty solid draw for Carolina, I think. Starting with UNLV, I mean, look, that's a team that, is I'm not going to say it's on the same level as Texas, but they're a team that's given Carolina fits before. They've beaten them a few times here in the last decade. So, I mean, Carolina's got to be prepared for that game. That team is nowhere near the team that they were even a few years ago, but still a good test for Carolina. And then, I mean, you mentioned, Alabama's going to be there. I'm not really overly concerned about them. I think Indiana and Texas are the teams that everybody's going to look at. But, I mean, you can't forget about Stanford. Gerard Haas is doing a fantastic job there. Recruiting-wise, that's probably one of the biggest shocks here in the last couple of years is how well he's recruiting. If he can sort of show that recruiting is going to carry over onto the court, that team has a chance to be really good. So I think that's one of the teams that not a lot of people are talking about. And then Providence is there as well. Ed Cooley, he's a guy that, Carolina's seen a lot of times. He has been really, really steady at Providence. I mean, in the Big East, they're always a factor. I think
he's been able to patchwork his way to a lot of good seasons there.
Usually, I mean, it's them and Villanova at the top of the Big East. Everybody else is kind of behind them. They're always in the hunt, though. They seem like a team that consistently makes the tournament. So, again, there's not the world beaters. There's not a team that you look across on the other side and say, okay, they're on the same level with Carolina or should be on the same level with Carolina because, this year going into the preseason, it's different. I mean, we're still expecting a lot, but we're expecting a lot from a team that went 14-19. So there are going to be people that are not going to have Carolina as the favorite in certain games if they go through and do the preseason predictions and stuff like that. Maybe even in this tournament, depending on what the outlook of these rosters are. I mean, we don't really know. We don't go as in-depth on other teams' rosters as we do Carolina. So we don't know the ins and outs. So we have no idea if there's a team, one of these teams is, loaded, supposed to be great. I don't think so from what we understand, but I still feel like, Carolina's going to come in with expectations. You're going to be in your home state. I think, this sets up well for Carolina to have success, but also is a good enough challenge where you can look back on this later in the year and say, this is an area that really helped us and built us into the team that can be competitive when we get to the ACC tournament and when we get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, this is probably going to be Carolina's a good portion of their non-conference schedule. I mean, we're still sitting here, the day of recording, it's October 8th. We don't have a non-conference schedule. We don't have an ACC schedule. So
that's my thing when Rothstein tweets about how, we're like 40 days from the start of college basketball. What is that going off of? Is that going off of the first holiday tournament?
That's going off the start date. You can start playing November 25th.
Right. Because as of right now, it's not just Carolina. This is not Carolina.
Everywhere.
This is not an ACC. Nobody has a schedule. They don't know. This is unprecedented. It's almost, I mean, we've never seen anything like this before.
Because there's still a pretty good chance they'll scrap the non-conference schedule,
right?
And we'll be like we are with college football, where you're playing a conference only and maybe a one non-conference,
which makes sense. My problem with how they're handling the situation is that we have heard absolutely nothing on what the plan is, and with college football, it just felt different. It felt like there were times where it would be, you could say, well, maybe it was misleading or something like that. There were times where they said, look, they're gathering today to discuss. They've had Zoom meetings to discuss. We've heard nothing like that for college basketball. Pretty much we're just rolling off the assumption that as of right now, everything is going as it was supposed to from the start date on through the rest of the year, but we don't have a schedule to go off of. So it makes no sense, and it's why the NCAA is just it's getting a lot of criticism for how it's handled this, both on the college football and college basketball front, and rightfully so. Again, we don't want to be in the position of Mark Emmert or anybody in the NCAA right now. This is an extremely tough decision on how you handle all these things. But at the same time, we just want to know that something is going on behind the scenes, because as of right now, we're assuming that they haven't really even talked this out yet. We have no clue what is happening right now.
This is why college football and college basketball, they need a czar, a commissioner of some sorts that we could hear from on a more, routine basis. Not saying that we hope that COVID-19 or these kind of crises happen on an annual basis, but for if just
you just need it in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're at the point now where there's so